Hello, mamas, papas, teachers, all the people that are listening to It's Going to Be Okay with Dr. Roseann. I'm super excited to have my friend and warrior mom, Ellen, on this episode. Because Ellen and I, we can talk for 7 hours, and we're worried that this is going to be an exceptionally long conversation. But today, right? And Ellen, we were joking before we got on, every single provider, like health provider, has been vetted for me personally by Ellen because she's so amazing. I joke and I say that she like gives everybody a phone colonoscopy, but she doesn't just get on the phone, right? She doesn't just get on the phone. She goes and interviews physicians. So whenever I need help, I go, Ellen.
The FBI last time we spoke.
You're like the FBI. But today we're going to talk about neurofeedback and PEMF for concussion recovery. And we're going to share the story of now your young adult son, Colin, and what happened to him. And I just think it's an incredible story because, you know, when you came to me, let's talk about what brought you to me all those years ago and how concussion really unfolded in his life at multiple points, because he didn't just have one concussion, he had multiple ones, but really how it stopped him and how it affected his mood, his attention, his executive functioning, and how he has recovered and is really moving through beautifully as an adult who really cares about his own self-care, which is a big deal. When we think our kids are not into what we're doing, which at times are going to revolt. But talk about what happened, how you came to me, and it all started with a brain map in working with me. But what happened all those years ago?
So Colin this was probably around 2012, his first concussion. I didn't really know much about concussions. You know, we grew up thinking, oh, you get a concussion and a few days later you're good. I didn't know anything about it. So he was very young, in, I think, the 5th grade at the time. He was at a lacrosse game and he was checked from behind, an illegal move. And he went down face first on the turf with his helmet and was knocked out. And so I wasn't even there. I was across town at my daughter's soccer game. My sister-in-law was there. And that night we were in the ER. He was dizzy in the shower and they told us he had a big concussion. So, you know, we have functional medicine in our family and, you know, holistic medicine in our family. So we knew not to put him in sports. We kept him home. He was home immediately. Like he was home the rest of the school year. We didn't let him do anything that whole summer sports wise. And then the following February, that was June of 12. And then the following February, we were doing supplements and that kind of thing. But then February, he had another one. On the basketball court, he hit his head against somebody's head just playing basketball, and that flipped him out into another concussion. And then
that was a horrible concussion.
And that was even more, I think the first one was more damaging than we ever knew because he was so young. But to get another one, not even 9 months later, it was horrific. And I was away in Florida with my father who was dying. So again, I wasn't there. My husband was there. So he was at a school that was from February. He didn't go back to school that whole year. He was home. He was getting tutored later. And then I think I started seeing, I found osteopathy and we were doing cranial sacral, which was really helping him. And then that's where I learned about neuro. And my brother-in-law had kept saying, you know, you need to get a QEEG. You need to get a QEEG. I didn't even know what that was. And here, lo and behold, you're like in my town, 5 minutes away. I was like, oh my God, this is great. And I had been taking Colin to neuropsychologists, and they were trying to do cognitive behavioral therapy on him. And even at his young age, what was he, like 7 or 8? He's like, this isn't working. This is a waste of time. And, you know, I'm just like searching for something that's going to make a difference because he wasn't getting any better in the morning. He would wake up and not be able to get out of bed. And the doctors, the neurologists, I had him to specialist in Philadelphia at Children's Hospital. They're like, that's really not normal. I'm like, okay, well, it's our normal.
So what do we do about it? Ellen
what
and
are we
I are
doing
action
about
girls.
it? And I had him out, I had him out on the 504 plan, and I was investigating. I was following Concussion Legacy Institute, which was new. I was calling Boston. I knew that he needed aerobic activity to keep his brain stimulated. I had a bike in the house that it was making him ride. I knew that I knew he wasn't getting better. And so finally we come to meet you right in town. And there's Roseann, big pop personality, fun to talk to, easy. And of course we did the QEEG, but before we did the QEEG, we left that office day one, Roseann, and Colin's like, that's it. I want to go to Roseann, raising his hand. This is it. This is it. She's it. She's it. So we did the QEEG, and we come in to listen, and immediately, the hippocampus is lit up, right? We didn't even know what that was really, right? And you asked this pivotal question. You said, Colin, how do you feel when you wake up in the morning after you go to sleep? And this is 2.5, 3 years in. 2.5, 3 years in. He's like, well, when I wake up, I don't feel like I ever went to sleep. Boom. Mic drop right there.
Because he was sleeping a lot.
Because
he was sleeping a lot, and there was no restorative sleep.
And his brain was not able to go to shut down. So we all know at this point that your brain is healing at night when you go to sleep.
Right.
It's 3 years in. His brain is not healing at night. Hello. So I almost fell off my chair, and you went right into like what parts of his brain were lit up and what parts of his brain weren't, and this and that. And then we started the treatment, and because we were on a clean diet already, no
That's
sugar, all the supplements, I had all that from my brother-in-law for years.
Who's an integrated physician, by the way.
Yep,
a trailblazing integrated
trailblazer.
physician.
Yep. And he, was like, but this was the missing link. Neurofeedback was the missing link. And this child, he immediately responded, right? And how many sessions we were going to do? 40, whatever it was. I don't remember. And 10 weeks in, it was early. It was like 3 weeks early. He had this meltdown, and I called you, and I'm like, he's having this crazy meltdown. Call me back. And you were like, no. We talked about it. And you're like, no. This is a pivotal shift. The brain is healing. He's having it early, and it didn't last or anything like that. But it was a shift.
It was a day. It was like a day.
It was one day, but it was something that scared me. And then and then he went on, and he was with you.
And then we saw a shift. We saw a shift in sleep. We saw a shift in attempt to mood, right?
Mood, energy.
Just to understand,
being able to get up out of bed.
Yep. Colin,
his personality started coming back through. His personality started coming back through. There was less exhaustion. There was less fatigue, less mood swings, whatever. Because we learned that whatever you go into, whatever your Achilles heel is going into a concussion, it's exasperated after the concussion. So he was a little moody, and it's his personality. He wants things his way and that kind of thing. And then it was
generally a very pleasant kid. Just to know Colin,
a super gregarious and fun, and had a great sense of humor.
Yeah.
But he was tired. His brain wasn't resting. Yeah. Okay. So then, that was the beginning of a long road, but such a quick turnaround for us, right in front of our eyes. We're like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. And of course he was still doing all the other modalities. He was doing craniosacral. I was taking him for acupuncture. He was getting, medical massage. We were on it, and he was so open. And honestly, now, I call him my spa baby, because he's open to this day to these kinds of things. And my daughter too. And then, Morgan came to you later for other things, but this is a gift that they have, because, I used to say to my husband, this is it. It's one brain. We fix this now, or we're going to be dealing with this for the rest of their life.
I know.
This, people will be like, oh, what does that cost? And first of all, it's nobody's business what it costs, boundaries. But at the same time, you're like, I don't care what it costs. Like I gotta send my kids off into the world with a functioning, healthy brain.
Yeah.
Not to mention, like I said, concussion, like we were together, you and I, like it was 2013 when I met you. This stuff was just coming off the horizon. Like now I watch your podcasts and I'm like, so everybody's so educated. It's so awesome. And, they come in ready to do the work where, you and I would be like, we felt like we were like pioneering, like teaching
Right.
people.
Well, because you had a whole lifetime of this experience of being
Yeah.
pre-educated with a functional doctor. And I think what's amazing about Colin's story is like you were doing everything right.
And he was very frustrated
stuck,
that still wasn't right. It still wasn't good.
I mean, you and I mean, you're dogmatic. Like you don't know that something isn't going to go the way that it's supposed to go. I mean, that's one of the many things I love about you. And I think what's like when people hear this story, right? It's like, it doesn't matter what the issue is. It doesn't matter if your kid has anxiety or OCD. And like people come to me and, most people that are listening, they've done a lot. So then they say, well, why is this thing, whether it's diet, whether it's neurofeedback, whether it's PEMF? Because once we got PEMF, we added that to the mix too, because Colin went on to have another terrible concussion. And we'll talk about that. But you have to get to a point when you're like, okay, this isn't working. What can I do differently? And you're very analytical like me, like, okay, the cranio, on the days we do cranio, we notice this, this, and this. When I do neuro, I notice this, this, and this. And we would get together and strategize. And we'd be like, okay, let's make sure that his test is on this day and that and the other thing. And what do we have to put in the 504? Yeah. And it restored his brain. Then unfortunately, he got hit in the nose.
So then he went on. He had the 504. He was straight through, that was 6th grade, then 7th and 8th grade.
So about 10th grade.
7th and 8th grade, he was on the 504, no sports. I had the gym. I had the school at the gym. I was like, listen, these kids need aerobic activity with the concussions. I was sitting in meetings. I'm like, you should have a stationary bike in there and let them like pedal around. They're looking at me like I'm crazy. They're like, what? And one teacher was like, this will probably get cut. One teacher was like,
no, we don't.
Well, just be, I never heard of that. I never heard. I'm like, well, just because you never heard of it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And there's my husband sitting behind me.
Amen, sister.
I'm the mouth, but my husband sits behind me. Like he's like, walk quietly and carry a big stick. And these school people were like, oh my God, it was epidemic how many kids were getting concussions, not even getting diagnosed.
Yeah.
Let alone
and it was a lot of sports concussions. And, I think what's really important, and you said something that I want to kind of unpack a little bit, is so just to understand when brain injuries happen. And when I do QEEGs, I can see birth trauma in a lot of cases. You can see concussions. It doesn't have to be recent. It can be from 30 years ago. Happens all the time. But for most brains, even though you can have a concussion on the first one, most people recover. And that recovery should occur within a 6 to 8 week window. We kind of know the sort of sweet spot. If you're not recovering mostly, 90% or better by 8 weeks, you're most likely going to have a long-term recovery. But it's the second, third, fourth injury that really does the damage. Right. And when you have a concussion, or any injury, right? And please know you don't have to be seeing stars. That's such a freaking myth. Or knocked out or unconscious. It's any sudden acceleration or de-acceleration that could lead to a head trauma. And that's why a lot of athletes get injured, brain injuries, without even full contact sports.
They don't even know. Yeah, they don't even know. Yeah.
But the in that first head injury, right? In the next 6 months, you have an 80% chance of having a second
the neurologist did not tell me. Hello.
Right.
I know. In the neurologist's office, and they're like, oh, sorry. I was like, that would have been some tidbit of information I should have walked out of here with 9 months ago, people. I was so angry.
So angry. And the vestibular system, right? So it's your brain's visual system that doesn't match up to your motor system. There's like a drag. It's a sluggish. And so you're going to often misperceive like, oh, here's the stairs, and so then you tend to get, other injuries. A great example is I had a kid that I work with that had a concussion. He was recovering. He was doing really well. And he went to go get a cat on a stair up on the stairs, and he misjudged it and fell. And it was really the second head injury. And he didn't even hurt himself that much. It wasn't like he had a big bruise or he had any of those things. But that second injury destabilized him. It took us months to get him back to
one
school.
that destabilized Colin, well, there were two, the last two. So Colin's had 4 recorded, okay? There was actually one in between February of 13 and then October of 13. In the middle of the summer, running by the playground, some kid swinging, and Colin's running by the swing, and the kid kicks him, and he goes back into the pole. Okay, that wasn't even done. Hello. Then, so that, I don't know what that did to him. But then I'm getting on a plane in October. We think everything is hunky-dory. He's now in 6th, 7th grade, whatever it was. And I'm boarding, and I get a call. I hadn't been anywhere, and I get a call, and they're like, hey, it's the school nurse. Colin was picking up a pencil under his desk and clocked his head. He's got a massive headache. I had to leave the airport and go home. I was like, what? And that one, because before he fell frontward.
Right.
And then he had on the side with the head, and now he's got the back. And that was that really killed him. And then that was, for another 2-3 years after that. But again, like, I think when that one happened, like, I knew exactly where to go. I was like immediately in cranio, like, whatever, I could do those things because they were gentle. But that was really debilitating.
You had your toolkit. You knew
I had my toolkit. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And, and you mentioned what you bring to the table, right? It's the same thing with trauma. So a concussion exacerbates what's kind of naturally there.
Right.
So variables that worked against him was sort of a brain propensity towards mood. I don't think this would ever even be an issue for him if he didn't have these concussions. It just sort of brought it to the surface. And then the other thing is he has scoliosis. So we know
there's a history.
The recovery is harder when
we didn't know he had scoliosis. We did not know he had scoliosis then. So I am a childhood scoliosis patient, but my body is much different than my husband. So then we had to learn, I learned all about like just the makeup of the body. Colin is wiry like me, very, very flexible. This did not help while he was having concussions.
No, absolutely.
And my daughter is built like my husband. She's more like a beef tenderloin, like her. She's got much more muscular, strong, but like he doesn't like look like he's weak, but he's very flexible. And
that's why girls tend to actually have more problems with concussion because they lack the same neck strength that males do.
As children with neck strength, they tell you shouldn't be heading up. My daughter's a soccer player straight through college. Kids should not be heading a ball until they have pubic hair, because at that point the neck can support. Otherwise, you got a bobbly head. So, these are all things that we were learning between 2010 and 2015.
Because you would have never known if the injury wasn't there. And please know, we're not saying don't do sports. We're not saying that.
No, it's got to be smart.
To have an understanding. And this is really about a conversation, right? If you weren't who you were, what would have happened and what people tried to do, but don't ever mess with Ellen, is when he wasn't going to school, they try to pass it off as a mental health issue only because in theory, this shouldn't have been concussion, right, Ellen? And so, you were like, I'm not having any of that.
Right. So then the concussion syndrome was like, well, what does that mean? And are you sure he just doesn't want to come back? And I'm like, okay, people, first of all, it's winter in Connecticut, dreary. You really think this kid doesn't want to be with his friends? He wants to sit home and stare out at the gray. This is where I had to bring the bike up into the living room, put it on the wheel, put it on the stand. It was my bike. And like, I didn't even have an exercise bike, just to have him pedal, to do aerobic exercise, just to
get the lymphs going, get the energy going, blood
his
flow
going. He felt good, and he'd break a sweat. Otherwise, they're laying around like slugs, and it's just like wah wah wah. And I got to listen to the school say he doesn't want to go back, and I'm like,
I
really?
know.
I'm like,
it's amazing to me that, you know, in this world, you know, I do a lot with school, you know, school refusal, and you've been here when it's during the day at our center where it's filled with kids that aren't going to school for a lot of reasons. You know, most kids want to go back to school, whether it's because, you know, they're dealing with something like concussion or even bullying or anxiety or depression. They want to have a place that feels good to them and they can be successful in. Nobody really doesn't want to be there. You know, even when the kid is telling you that, they want to be with their friends. They don't want to miss out on stuff. So I'm not saying they're going to love the schoolwork, and, you know, and it was a journey to get him back to school. It really was.
We had to go, we had to do the in-home schooling. And then it wasn't like he was going to sit at in-home schooling for 2-3 hours. It was painful. Like he would go 15 minutes and have to go lay down. 15 minutes and have to go lay down. This kid, the fortitude that he has now, I mean, like, I had it, you get, when you have a child that has a lifelong thing, like, or something that happens to them. I had that when I was young.
Because you had the scoliosis. It was a big deal. You had a brace. It was tough.
You know? And my dad used to say to me, you know, this is going to make you stronger. This is going to make you stronger. And it has made Colin stronger. It really has. Now he's in college. And, you know, the next concussion came in, he was doing great, you know, freshman year, sophomore year of college, high school. And then basketball, like somebody jumps and the elbow comes down on his nose. And breaks. I'm like, come on. He was out all of 10th grade.
That's right.
And this is where the depression starts now.
That's really where it started. And it started, the concussion was the igniter of it, but the missing out on everything. And he had a great group of friends too.
Oh, thank God. So this is where my group of friends that hold me together, they've had children with more serious, not I want to say more serious, but different kinds of things, clinical depression, like at age 6, mental health, depression that runs in the family. And my friends, I have 2 friends who like would talk me off the ledge, like, you know, but they told me like the best thing that Colin could have, thank God he's got these group of friends and he's socially intact. So that was a blessing. Okay. Because the worst is when you're home and you have this, and then you don't have that group. That's right. Besides your, like, it's so important. And I had that when I was young. Anyway, the 10th grade was awful. And heartbreaking was when he was 16 in 11th grade, we took everybody to the beach, our beach house, and they're all sitting around talking. And, you know, at this point I've got like a bunch of 16-year-olds, like close proximity where I can actually hear what they're saying. It's pretty interesting. And they're all having fun and games. And I hear them one night just talking, and a couple of them are like, I don't even remember you in high school. Because guess what? He wasn't really there. It was so sad. Or kids on a sports team would be like, a particular kind of sports team that think they're all that. Colin had like elementary school friends on this team. What are you hanging out with him for? You know, he doesn't play anything. And this friend was like, he's one of my closest friends. They're still good friends, you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you got to talk.
That's a real friend.
Colin has always, I don't know, blessed with, I guess they always say you attract what you are. Honestly, he's the best of all of us.
I mean, your kids are so great. And I think
he's really the best of all of us. Like, he really is. He really is. And,
he's a doll. And listen, the whole crew is pretty awesome, but also you really talk to your kids straight. Your kids are so open about mental health. You know, even when they're struggling, there's not shame. They feel good about talking about it. And I think that's such a big
it's really
difference.
big. It's always been open. But what the challenge that we met, which I think is important to talk about, and this is what I was saying, is that there comes a time when you have a child that's going through all this stuff, anybody that's going through it, where you get tired. They get tired. Colin would be like, by 12th grade, he was over it. He was just like, he saw you straight through 11th grade. And then 12th grade, he started pushing back on me. And he was just like, I don't want to go. I'm fine. I'm tired of being sick. I'm not broken. Okay. So there's a whole nother aspect now that you're dealing with, right? And what do you do? So we start talking to the therapist, and then there's this anger that's deep seated that needs, and maybe because he's a boy, and I don't know what it was, but I was able to get a lot of that out when I was a kid with my mom and my dad. Colin was holding it in, not wanting to tell me how badly he was feeling. Well, that all kicked up when he goes off to school in COVID and is on lockdown.
Oh, what a terrible time to
and
go
that
off
was
to
a
college.
whole nother, joke. And because then what hits him is, first of all, he hasn't been doing neuro. His brain really wasn't ready for school. It really wasn't.
And then the isolation.
And then the isolation. And then the
knocked
depression. Then the
him down like so many kids.
Serious depression sets in that I don't even realize how bad it is until like spring. And then I get him home and we're watching his grades just go like this. And then he finally comes to us in the July after freshman year. And it's just like, I was having some pretty serious bad thoughts. Okay. So then we're dealing with that. And we did deal with it. But the good news is that when you're then looking for therapy and different things that you're going to do for depression, and I'm worrying now, is my son going to be clinically depressed the rest of his life? This was a horrifying thought, right? We went back to neurofeedback and we went back to the QEEG, and the QEEG shows us that Colin is not clinically depressed. He does not have ADHD. This is what's so beautiful about the QEEG. And my children will tell their friend, you are looking at a picture of something you can physically see. This is where all the things we're doing, like there's scientific proof right in front of you. And this is what I try to tell other parents. I'm like, why would you not do this? Right. And that's where it all marries up. And like before, when Colin was like, this is it, I want to work with Roseann, he went right back. He's like, I want to do that again. Like, we need to do this again. Right. And he saw that his brain,
the value of it. He felt the difference.
And looking at that QEEG, he hadn't had one since 11th grade, I think. Right. So now it's like almost 3 years later. And, he was ready. He was ready. He was ready to read that because he had been to cognitive behavioral therapy while he was the first year in college, talking, and then they hit a wall.
Yeah.
They hit a wall. It's just not doing enough. What's wrong here? Because it's not all about cognitive behavioral therapy, talk therapy.
No, and let's talk about that first year. This was the beginning of COVID. There was no student interaction, and you're in your room on a device. Yeah. So many kids were depressed, and I just want you to know that was a reaction that most kids were feeling, and many college kids, I felt like they had the hardest hit. And he was a freshman. So it wasn't like he had a group of friends. Like, he didn't have people, and it was just really a knock.
Well,
and
Colin, blessed as he is, did make friends with kids around him that he's still with to this day. And they were life-saving for him, really, because they were in single rooms. We didn't want him, because it was COVID, we didn't want him in a group room. But that single room, as it was brand new and beautiful, it was all cement walls and a cement ceiling. He said to me the next year, I never want to see a cement ceiling again. I mean, a lot of kids suffered from depression. This is the beauty of already knowing we were able to hit the ground running day
and get support.
We knew what we needed. This is huge, because I have people who call me and they're like, my kid is getting ready to graduate, and then COVID happened, and they just zoned out and don't want to go, and that they left school. I can't even find mental health. I can't even find therapists. I don't even know what to look for. This is where we were so lucky and blessed, because I knew exactly what we needed. And my kids were like, yeah, let's go. Colin's like,
and you trust your gut, because you're a warrior mom, and you're not going to let depression be in charge, and that head injury. And, I think what's the miracle about Colin, now we're on the other side of it. he really has embraced neurofeedback
Yeah.
and therapy, right?
Mhm.
Because he was
Yes.
regulated enough to do that.
Yes,
And
yes.
he's taken on caring for himself. Like I
Right.
remember there were times, just very normal developmental things, where you'd be like, Ro, you got to talk to him about the food. You got to talk to him about the supplements, right? Because Ellen would call me
They
like,
get
I'm not
tired.
having this.
In the beginning, when he's 8 years old, he'll do anything I say. I'm like, take these
Yeah.
supplements and do this. And
Yeah.
then high school, the end of high school, that's a normal time for kids to push you away anyway, especially boys. They're like, I'm done with you.
Plus,
Leave me
he
alone.
was nervous about going to school. He was already
We
nervous
were beside
before.
ourselves. Do we send him? Do we not send
Yeah.
him? I was beside myself. And, you know, at one point, the school was like, I go, what happens if he fails? And they're like, you got to let him go. Like, he wants to go. And he did go. And it's really funny.
Not an easy choice. Do you know how many
You gotta
times
really
I have
get
that
attitude about it.
conversation?
It's like, not everything happens for a reason. My kids will always say, I taught them everything happens for a reason. And to this day, he's like, everything that happened to me is not bad, Mom.
No,
You
no.
know, it chokes me up.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm okay. So the thing is that I guess my message, and this is what I was saying to you,
Yeah.
mental health is a lifelong journey with self-care. Like, it doesn't end. It's not like a thing where you take a pill and it's over and everybody's hunky-dory. It ebbs and flows, it changes. And I will say,
we have real life. We
Yeah.
have real life. Like, you know, what got Colin was real life. COVID happening really destabilized him. And, you know, and you got in there pretty quick, you know, and because you knew what resources really helped him. But, you know, mental health is an evolutionary process. Like, it's never finished.
It's never finished. And that is something that had to come to him on his own. And now, you know, a lot of people that he knows, there were kids all over with and without mental issues before they even left for school, that after COVID came out of it with a mental issue, like they had mental health issues. And Colin and my daughter, they recognize this. They recognize it, the signs and the warnings, well before a lot of people do, even in their own peer group.
Because they have an anchor. They're connected to themselves. And they don't try to push it away.
When you're fighting the good fight, and you got to be the heavy, which is what my job is. You know, my husband's working, and not only that, like, I grew up in this a little bit, so I have that fortitude that came with having something when I was young. In fact, your therapist told me there's some book about people who have had an issue, a lifelong issue, and then have children that have a different lifelong issue, and how there's this bond, and there truly is. But anyway,
I mean, it's
really
a blessing of the
my
skin.
children go, listen, that person, you know, yeah, they really need this, or, you know, their parents are slowly trying to find, like, you know, they don't push it on anybody, but they know they're one of us now. We made them, Roseann.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. There are little soldiers out there carrying on our work.
I joke all the time, you know, I'm trained in hypnosis. I don't do it, but you know, when their kids are little, when they play, they're actually in a hypnotic state. So I would whisper things to them like, you know, I love gluten-free. I will marry a girl that my mother loves, you know, and they joke all the time.
Talks like that. He makes fun of me all the time. It is hilarious. He makes all the little things I say, or he'll be out, or like one time when he was little, like, talk about food. He was little and he was at some play date at somebody's house, and they had all these crazy snacks that, like, I would never have. And he's like, yeah, Ma, it was all that. And I was laughing like my mom should see. And he didn't eat any of them.
Good. Yeah. Oh, my John Carlos, he's a believer.
He was little. Now, you know, try to tell a college kid not to eat fried food and, you know, all the other crap they do in college.
Yeah.
It's hard. But
no, it is hard, and they'll have to make their own decisions. And, you know, it depends. I mean, I know even you thought about a lot of things when you picked a school. I learned so much from you. How many times they clean the bathroom? That's on my list. You know, the biggest
was when I walked into his school and they had, remember I called you losing it. I went into their LEP program, which was like an extra thing that you pay for kids to have extra learning. They help kids that need extra.
Yes.
And they had this shirt that I have one. It was a picture of a head, and it was inside the head was all biodiversity, like celebrate your brain diversity, right? And I was like, oh my God. And then I got invited in to talk about what you do they're like, you're such a brain nerd. And I'm like, calling you like, listen, you need to do this stuff in the colleges.
I remember.
Right?
Well, yeah.
You're like, I can only do so much, Ellen. Can't save the world.
I can't. I was like, I'm happy to have colleges come and have me speak at their colleges.
Yeah, Colin's sitting there like, we go to lunch.
To contact me. I do a lot of speaking.
Everybody
and TED Talks are coming, Ellen.
What?
And TED Talks are coming this year.
TED Talks. Yeah, right. Yeah.
So I'm super excited about that. You'll see. It's all going to be about calming the brain and and then another one on parenting. There's two, one this year and one in January of 2024. So Ellen, I love you and I could talk to you all day. And, I would say when we talk about neurofeedback and PEMF and working with us in general, what would you say to somebody who, whether they have a concussion or anxiety or depression, what would you say to somebody who's considering, using these tools, whether they're working with us or somebody else? What would you say to somebody who's on the fence?
I would say that they are dramatically more successful, more effective and safe than going like a pharmaceutical route where you have to, which is basically a crapshoot. Oh, take this pill and see if it works. Take that pill and see if it works. I mean, like, give me a break. And it's, it's game changing is what it is. It's game changing.
Yeah, and it is.
It's game changing and it's effective and it's safe. And it's just safe,
Yeah. And in your case, you were surprised that it worked as quickly as and effectively as it did.
Because I had been suffering. We had been watching him for 3 years and it wasn't getting better. And I just was like, all right, well, maybe this is just going to take a long time. And then to watch it help him so quickly.
Yeah. We got him back to school that first time. If he didn't get the elbow into his nose,
I know. I just had his braces taken off, and I was like, "What happened to your teeth?" I thought he cracked his teeth. He's like, "I had a concussion."
You don't know what's going to destabilize you. It could be the simplest thing. And then, for parents in general that are on a journey, and maybe this is a new thing for them, healing naturally, because not everybody who's listening or watching have any experience to natural solutions, and they may just be in a desperate Google search. What do you want parents to know about why they should use natural solutions in general?
In general, I just think that they're extremely effective. I mean, I think I've seen them just be so effective and so safe. And there's just really no bad side effects. You're not dealing with any of that. So why not? I think a lot of people, I got to be honest with you, they're looking for a quick fix. They're looking for something simple. They're looking for, does insurance cover it? And I'm just going to do it. And that's it. And I'm like, listen, this is the rest of your life. This is the rest of your kid's life. This is all you got to do. You got to put a kid out in a world with the healthiest brain and mental state they can possibly be in. I mean, they're up against so many other things than we ever were. And
it is a misnomer that these other things are cheaper, because one therapy session,
you don't get any results. So really, what are you really saving? You're not saving anything. You're wasting time. That's
and most people, you're wasting time.
You're wasting valuable time while the brain is pliable. This is the thing. The brain's pliable to what? To 25 years old, right?
Well, our brain is always pliable. The biggest window is before age 9. That's the biggest window.
We do know it's pliable forever, but
you can increase neuroplasticity with diet, right? I think you really have embraced health, right? You had a back injury that really just changed your whole life, and you had to. And I think, when you think about those own personal game changers, right? Diet, like I always ate clean, always, my entire life. But when I went gluten and dairy free, it was a whole other world. Like it was like, and I kept changing and, only organic. And then, I only eat sheep's milk, and I just couldn't tolerate it. I don't believe it's that way for everybody, but we know these foods don't really promote brain health. And you have to, when you're struggling with mental health or physical health, you got to pull everything in.
You have to pull from all areas. It's not one fix. But I will say this, the neurofeedback was the missing link. It truly was the missing link. We were already doing clean eating. We were already doing exercise. We were already doing craniosacral therapy. We were already doing acupuncture. These are all on an 8-year-old. Okay.
Right.
I was taking him to Manhattan to my people. It was ridiculous. And then until I could find my team in our area in Richfield, which everybody was right there. I didn't even know it. So lucky. Right?
Kind of funny how it's such like a holistic spot,
Really great. Really,
but here's the great news. Once the parts of his brain that were underworking and overworking went back online, then his brain was calm. Its resources could go back and heal itself. And all those adjunctive therapies worked synergistically together, right?
And they work better, and they're actually getting results.
It was unbelievable. So you kept persisting, and then you tapered down, and that is really important,
Like,
and I think
he's been in therapy over a year, back to therapy. He went back to neurofeedback in February of last year, and now he's concluding, and he's in such a much healthier brain space. His personality, his skin, his sleep, just
the way he acts.
Everything, now he's on the phone calling me and just to chit chat, where before he would just go dark on me and I'd be like,
and you were hunting him down going, take your supplements.
Take your vitamins. So whatever. But now
because he responded to when he took his vitamins. So,
but now when he doesn't feel well, he's got them there and he takes them himself.
At
some point,
maturity kicked in, but maturity that was being pushed back because he was struggling, right? You can't be everything all the time. And, he really is a beautiful human being. And I love that you did all these things to get him to this next level and that he feels really good about himself and where he's at. And he also is, he's still consulting with you, but he's taking charge. And he's like, this is what I need, Mom. And I hear that in my conversations with you, which is such a turning point.
He'll talk to his therapist, he'll make his appointments, he'll talk. Oh no, you don't need to talk to. That's the other thing. I'm like, oh, let me talk. No, I got it. Like, okay. And then he'll tell me we are on the same page. Because when I'm not hip, I'm like, I don't know if I really like that too much. And then later he'll be like, you're not wrong, Mom.
I know, right?
That's what my kids like to say. That's what they say. You're not wrong. And
no.
I'm like,
Yeah. But damn straight I'm not wrong. I'm Ellen.
They're analyzing things the way I analyze things. And so now, like I said, there are
you were a role model for health. And you were also a role model for being calm when you're supposed to. Not letting them get away when they're not.
I don't know about that.
No, come on, Ellen. You were great. You and John are really upfront and open, and you share and you talk. And when your kids did stuff wrong, you were like, I will beat him. I know you didn't, but you would call me and be like,
that's a whole other podcast. Listen,
it's a whole other podcast. And your kids are doing amazing, and your life, now there's nothing like when you see your kids after any struggle thrive, and they're moving in that direction, but it's ongoing mental health.
It's not over. And
there's
no perfection. Okay. My husband likes to say everybody's got some, and
they all got their stuff.
It's all crap if they say that they don't. And that's what we've always said to our kids, everybody's got their shit. And and the thing is that it is ongoing, and there is no perfection, and there shouldn't be any perfection because nobody's perfect. But the thing is that hopefully the best you can hope for is that you're growing and learning new ways and advocating for yourself and taking care of yourself and wellness. This is all I teach them. When they go off to college, it's like they fall down this pit. They all do. They all do. They fall down a cliff, and then everybody's miserable for the first year, and then they got to crawl back up, and they're like, okay,
they got to figure it out.
What tools did I have that I'm like ignoring? You know, I'm like, why are you torturing yourself? Like, it's hard when you're a freshman, and honestly, that's a whole other thing.
Absolutely.
But moving out and moving in with, it's really rough. And
no, it's amazing that
you're a whole nother journey after all this that you go through, and then you got to start. It feels like you're starting all over. Only now they're not little kids doing whatever you say. They have like personalities and opinions. All this stuff gets in my way.
How dare they have opinions? No.
So it's like, Mom will tell you. John's like, Mom will tell you your opinion when she wants you to have it.
Well, you know what? Wrong. Strong women raising strong kids. That's the way I love it.
That's not what we talk about in therapy, Mom. You know, that all this therapy speak, right? I'm like, okay, go tell them how awful I am. Go ahead. I don't care. I'm paying the bill. I'm like, get it off your chest. I'm paying the bill. Tell them how awful I am. Go ahead. Have at it. Then you know what I get later? Oh, see, you just don't care. I'm like, oh my God, I cannot win.
You're so funny. Please know there's a lot of sarcasm in here, and that, you know,
but seriously, you have to have a good sense of humor too. You cannot take yourself so seriously, because the kids need to have a good sense of humor, because there's so much pressure on them, and they think they have to be so perfect, and they really don't. You know, that's a whole other podcast.
That's it. But, and I think adults are labored by that too, and we have to role model. Like I role model imperfection every day.
And comparison and all of that awful stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Miss Ellen, you are amazing.
It's so fun, Roseann.
It's so fun. Your kids are amazing, spectacular human beings. And thank you for sharing the story. I know you're always so open about it to anybody who will listen. Anytime. And sharing. And that's what makes a difference, because we do feel alone when our kids are struggling, and we're afraid to ask for help. And if you're listening and you're looking for natural solutions, you can join my parenting group on Facebook. It's drroseann.com/group. Wherever you are in the journey is exactly where you need to be. And thank you, Ellen, for being who you are and sharing your story, because it touches a lot of people. Love you, my friend.
Love you.